This is Glee.
Will, I'm having a really difficult time hearing anything you have to say today because your hair looks like a briar patch. I keep expecting racist animated Disney characters to pop up and start singing songs about living on the bayou.
And this is Glee. And this is Glee. A show that was so singular in its humor and style that it hasn't really ever been replicated. There have been attempts by shows like Riverdale, which have been teen dramas that have done a musical episode, or something like High School Musical, the series, which was a teen drama that had the musical elements kind of like Glee did. But in terms of the show itself, nothing has really come close to capturing what Glee was. Welcome to the Whys of Music, and today we're going to ask a simple question. Could a Glee reboot work? If you don't know who I am, my name is Colton, and as evidenced, I love Glee. I'm wearing my Dalton Academy Warblers blazer for the occasion, and this show has taken over my brain for the last 5 years since I binged it during the pandemic. Glee, if you aren't aware, was a musical dramedy series that ran on Fox from 2009 to 2015. It was created by Ryan Murphy, Brad Falchuk, and Ian Brennan, and follows the story of the Glee Club, New Directions, at the fictional William McKinley High School. The show followed the choir as they took on all of the typical high school drama tropes, from relationships to social issues to whatever hijinks were occurring at the behest of series antagonist and overall series standout Sue Sylvester, played by Jane Lynch. So why am I talking about Glee 10 years after it went off the air? Well, I think it's closer to getting back on our screens than you might anticipate. In an interview with The Hollywood Reporter in 2024, one of the creators, Brad Falchuk, said, "I'm sure everything is always on the table, but is there a way to tell that story in a more modern way?" So much of what Glee was about was this transition from the old way of looking at representation to the new way of looking at representation. I never say no, but I wonder what the point would be, except it'd be a moneymaker. Ryan Murphy has expressed similar interests, saying that maybe a different format would work for the show, but that he wants to get back into that world at some point. I want to dig more into the Brad Falchuk, "Is there a more modern way to tell this story?" quote, though, because I would tend to say no. So let's lay everything out and see if we can answer once and for all, could a Glee reboot work? To start off, I'm operating under the assumption that this reboot maintains the spirit of the original show, but doesn't feature all of the characters from the original show. A lot of the standouts from the original show don't want to come back, such as Chris Colfer or Leah Michele. I think you could maybe get away with one, maybe a smaller actor like Cord Overstreet from the first show. But outside of that, I'm going new cast, in the same world, in the same space. With that being said, let's address one of the biggest concerns with the Glee reboot. The show is deeply, deeply of its time. Glee was very early 2010s in the way that it tackled social issues and the way that it paraded social tokenism throughout the show. It was inclusive, yes, but it was very baseline in that inclusion. For example, one of the most critically lauded storylines of the entire show is in season 1 when Kurt Hummel comes out as gay. This is a very great storyline, and it's a very great character arc for him. And it was a huge deal in 2009 to have a gay character coming to terms with the fact that they are gay on network television. But that wouldn't really be as groundbreaking if you had something like that now. And it's sort of just a baseline for TV show now, as opposed to something that is progressive and against the norm, which is what Glee was in 2009. This whole thing sort of just contributes to a broader conversation, which is that Glee was running an outdated playbook. They had a lot of character tropes that you just don't see nowadays. They had the jock, the popular cheerleader, the nerdy kid, the gay kid, and you just don't see that anymore. The whole conflict of the first couple seasons of the show being that the Glee Club has to rise from the ashes of being low on the social totem pole and being pushed down by the popular kids on the football team and the popular cheerleaders just really doesn't work now. People would see it as hacky compared to how it was viewed in 2009. The mere existence of Sue Sylvester as a character, who, as I said, is a series standout, just wouldn't work. The idea of this domineering sports coach who puts down the Glee kids just really would feel out of date in 2025. And if you can't do an analog for one of the show's most iconic characters, what are you doing the show for in the first place? If you don't believe me that Glee would lose a lot of its charm without being able to lean into these tropes, just look at the last season of the show. They take a lot of these tropey character arcs that they had in the first couple seasons and try to reintroduce characters and introduce new characters to fall under these tropes, but it just doesn't work in the same way. Instead of Kurt, they have a gay jock, but instead of him having this long season arc where he's coming to terms with being gay, since that by 2015 even was kind of out of date, they just make a couple funny observations about how he is gay and can be a jock. But funny observations kind of pale in comparison to conflict and emotional arcs like Kurt had in the first season. You know, the things you need for a story to be compelling. So we've talked about why creatively the show would need a complete overhaul to work, but let's talk about the business side, because TV shows like Glee just don't get made anymore. A 22-episode, hour-long show airing on network television is really a thing of the past outside of, like, procedurals such as SVU. The closest analog to a Glee-style show that I can think of on network television is something like Abbott Elementary, which often has 20-episode seasons and things like that, but even that's a 30-minute sitcom block as opposed to an hour drama block. Not only is it rare to see a show in Glee's format airing nowadays, but in terms of reboots like this Glee reboot would be, those haven't exactly fared well either. We've had reboots of iCarly, Gossip Girl, Gilmore Girls, all shows from around the same time frame as Glee, and all of them have been quietly canceled after three seasons. They all choose to mine nostalgia from around the same point Glee is trying to pull from, and they all failed with modern audiences. So creatively, the reboot would need to be a drastic departure from the original series, and business-wise, the show doesn't really make sense to air nowadays compared to how it did back then. But let's talk about the music. The main problem with the music landscape in Glee is that it's a lot less monoculturalistic than it was back then. You just don't have as many omnipresent hitmakers as you did. Glee could do episodes on Katy Perry and Lady Gaga and Rihanna, and that would work because everyone was listening to those songs on the radio. But nowadays with streaming and everyone sort of picking the music that they want to listen to, you just don't get that as much. Glee could do episodes about Olivia Rodrigo and Sabrina Carpenter, but the well would dry up pretty quickly, and I don't see them being able to tackle Tyler the Creator or Post Malone or Morgan Wallen in the same way. So let's take stock. Could a Glee reboot work? Technically, yes. It could get off the ground, run for a couple seasons, and be quietly canceled. We've seen it before. I'm sure it'll happen again with a different show. But I want to circle back to that quote earlier from Brad Falchuk, where he asked if there was a way to tell this story in a modern way. And I just don't think there is. I'm not saying it would be awful if we got a Glee reboot. I would be excited. I'd be cautiously optimistic, but I'd be excited. I just think that the Glee reboot would be facing an uphill battle. Glee is of its time in a way that I don't think could be updated without losing the fabric of what made the show so iconic in the first place. I would rather just let it lie than parade the show's corpse around like Weekend at Bernie's. Maybe a different format could suit it better, like Ryan Murphy said. I think a Glee Broadway show would work great. You could kind of play into the absurdism and the ridiculousness of the show in a way that you can't do on TV, because you're more divorced from reality on the stage. But a straight-up reboot, just doing another 3 seasons of Glee, is going to get a big old thumbs down from me. I want to know what you guys think, though. Do you want to see a Glee reboot? Do you think it would work? Or do you not think it would work? Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. It's the fastest way to get me off the ground. Until next time, guys, take it easy.